Chapter 16 The Great Fire. In spite of his downheartedness, Hugh urged on his horse whenever he showed a tendency to slacken his speed. A strange feeling of haste was upon him, though he knew not why, and he was glad when at long last he galloped into the little village which straggled upon the outskirts of the Abbey grounds. It looked quite deserted, as it had upon that other occasion which now returned vividly to his mind, the time when he had come upon Jacques Deroule, fleeing from the hue and cry that was raised hotly after everyone connected with his father's household. He wondered what had happened to Jacques. It was good to know that his sisters were safe in France, and his father in the Holy Land. Hugh thought of the king, and was surprised to find how completely his feeling of resentment and hatred had vanished. Those short glimpses of the monarch when his remorse had been so apparent, and then his sorrow and hurt pride at the rumored rebellion of his son, had somehow shown the boy very convincingly that the king was an erring human being who suffered for his mistakes and wrongs as intensely as ordinary folk. Evidently he worried about his children, felt disappointment and regret for them, and, perhaps, just because he was king, he knew greater loneliness than other people, and found little sympathy and less honest, friendly affection to lean on. Hugh not only forgave him in his heart for all the tragedy and pain in his own life and family that the king's impulsive words had been at least partly responsible for, but he thought of him with a pity that was almost akin to affection. Strange that the little town through which he was riding should be so completely deserted. Hugh roused himself from his wandering thoughts as he spied an old peasant sitting in the sun before his cottage door. He was the only human being about, and, as the boy rode closer, he recognized him as the ancient gaffer who had hobbled along beside him that day he had found Jacques and helped him on his way to sanctuary on the Galilee porch of the Abbey. He drew rein and greeted the old fellow with a friendly smile. "How comes it that there be no folk about the village, saving yourself, good neighbour?" he said. "Gone to the fire," answered the old man briefly. "I couldna go. Legs be stiff and unsteady these days." "Fire!" exclaimed Hugh. "Where?" "Abbey grounds. Hours and hours now they be a-burnin'." The boy waited for no further word, but dug his heels into the horse's side, urging, shouting, beating him, tired though he was, into a gallop again. Before long he could see smoke rising in great clouds, then flames like angry red tongues shooting through them. Half the monastic buildings must be ablaze. He raced on. His horse seemed to catch the sense of disaster and redoubled his speed. They reached the south gate, which was crowded with pleasant folk. Unable to force his way through on horseback, Hugh slid off and, leaving the beast to take care of himself, rushed into the grounds. A scene of desolation and confusion met his eyes. Already the Dorter, chapter house, and several other buildings, all of wood, were a mass of smoldering ruins. A great wave of smoke, heat, and cinders blew toward him from the church of St. Mary, which was a blazing furnace. He skirted it, running around to the west. There he found the brothers gathered in a body on the lee side of the suffocating flames and smoke, watching it burn. Hugh joined them, but no one seemed aware of him. They all stood or knelt with tragic, white faces turned toward the fire. Some were praying, others weeping. The faces of many were black with grime and cinders, their habits torn and scorched. Some still held buckets half filled with water, useless utterly in the magnitude of the blaze. Some clenched helpless hands, wringing them in despair. St. Joseph's Chapel was burning too, though the flames there had not yet got such a start. Hugh watched in agonized helplessness with the others. Suddenly, someone clutched at his sleeve. Turning, he saw Dickon, his eyes wild, his face chalk-white, his whole frame trembling. "Brother John!" he said, raising his voice almost to a shriek to be heard above the roaring and crackling of the flames. "Brother John! He is in the old church. I saw him go in a few moments ago, and he hasn't come out. He can't get out. See, the wooden walls are blazing all around it now, and the door has fallen in." A hoarse cry from one of the brothers standing near enough to hear, exclamations, shouts from others, half-articulated, half-sobbing groans and sentences that died on the lips. Hugh rushed nearer the blazing building, Dickon following him. "He must be trapped inside there," he cried through clenched teeth. "Dickon, quick! Get people with picks to go to the cleft near the old north gate, and dig! Make the entrance bigger, you know, the entrance to our passageway, so they can get us to that way or we can get out. I'm going to try to go through the flames here, through the door, and show Brother John the underground way out." Dickon gasped, but had no time to reply. Already Hugh was halfway across the ground that separated them from the door of St. Joseph's Chapel. He paused only for a moment to watch breathlessly as his friend reached the doorway, which was belching forth heavy smoke and flame, leapt through it, and was gone. Others besides Dickon had seen him go through, but it all happened so quickly they had no time to realize what the boy was about until he had vanished into the burning building. Then a shout rose up, a shout that ended in a groan of anguish. The roof and the inner walls of the chapel were of lead. When the heat grew great enough, they would fall, molten and searing, destroying utterly anything they fell upon. Hugh had only one thought, Brother John. If he were indeed inside that fiery furnace, he must be got out. Perhaps he was already overcome with smoke, and for that reason had not at least tried to come out again through the door. Perhaps he had tried and had been beaten back by the heat and flames, which were growing worse every moment. In that case only the trap-door and the underground passage would save him, and of these the boy was certain. He knew nothing. Once inside the building, he instinctively threw himself upon the stone floor where the air was less dense and choking with smoke. His eyes were blind with tears from the stinging soot. The heat from the burning walls was almost intolerable, but he crept along toward the sanctuary, stopping every few moments to wipe his streaming eyes and peer about. No sign of Brother John. Perhaps he had already found and lifted the stone above the passageway. He must himself get to that, and quickly, for there was no going back now, the way he had come. The low wall that separated the nave from the chancel offered some protection from the heat of the flames behind him, and when Hugh had crept through the arch of it, he found he could stand upright, though breathing was still difficult. The cloud of smoke was thinner also. He could see the sanctuary steps and rail, and behold, there kneeling upright before the altar were two figures, one slight, tonsured, in the black Benedictine robe, Brother John. The other towered, even in his kneeling posture, Blaharis the Hermit, with shaggy beard and matted white hair, dressed in his customary grey-white mantle, girdled with a rope. They knelt, the two of them, as tranquil and still as if they were in some quiet, lovely spot with naught in all the world to threaten danger or disturbance. All about them, heaped high on the chancel steps and the foot of the altar itself, was a strange assortment of articles. Hugh gasped in astonishment, and then remembered what Dickon had told him, and realized what they were, the treasures from the black chest in the hermit's hut. All the antique things the old man had found and cherished, loved so passionately, and called his own. Glimpsed through the smoke was the shine of gold and silver and bronze. The old-fashioned chained armor of King Arthur's day lay heaped there, with Excalibur in a place apart, as if singularly precious. The pectoral staff with its jeweled crook was there, the chalice and paten, and the odd castle-like reliquary. And directly in front of the old man, kneeling in such rapt absorption, lay a broken book. Hugh started forward with an instinctive motion to catch it up, for he knew at once what it was, the book of the Holy Grail, and all around it were piles of loose parchment pages, the very ones that he had labored over so long and lovingly. Perhaps the ones Brother John had deciphered were also there. He must seize them, all of them, and carry them out safe. But at that moment heat and flame suddenly wrapped the boy about, making him realize anew the peril of his position. Though the smoke had been less dense, the fire less menacing at this end of the church, they were rapidly encroaching upon him. There was not a moment to be lost, yet still the two men knelt motionless before the altar, their heads raised, their eyes fixed, completely oblivious of everything around them. Hugh lifted his eyes to see what it was the gaze of the two rested upon so intently. The ancient wooden altar, with its stone altar top, stood before them unadorned, as always. A cloud of smoke hung low over it, obscuring its surface, and then, unaccountably, the heavy opaque smoke thinned and grew lucent like a mist. Flame shot through it, shone with it and round about it, and yet not flame so much as light. Light rested on the surface of the altar, diffused at first, then contracting into a central spot of intense white radiance. It seemed now to stand upon the altar, now to float above it. Then it took form and substance in the semblance of a cup, a chalice covered with a shining white cloth. Brighter and brighter grew the light streaming from it, until Hugh's eyes could no longer bear to look upon it, and he covered them with his sleeve. When he looked again, the intense white radiance and that which contained it were gone. Only red, angry, leaping flames darted from the wall behind the altar, and dense black smoke billowed and settled above it. At that moment, a rumble and then a crash sounded behind him. The ground shook, and the blinding black smoke became thick with soot and flying dust. The ancient lead roof of the old church had sagged and fallen in over the nave. Only the part directly over the chancel still held. "Quick!" shouted Hugh, coming to his senses as out of a dream. "Brother John, Master Blaheris, the trap door over the passageway!" He fought his way through the blanket of smoke, coughing and choking toward the sanctuary steps. Another crash and roar, charred and burning wood and hot pieces of lead fell all about him. One of the walls had given way. Blindly, forced to his knees more than once, with one arm over his eyes and face to protect them, he struggled forward amidst the searing flames and falling debris. Brother John lay crumpled on the sanctuary steps. Hugh could just make out the form of the hermit lying prone just beyond him. For a moment, smoke and flames veered away, and he could see more clearly. Across the body of the old man lay a heavy beam. Hugh ran to him and struggled to lift it, straining with all his might till the sweat poured from him, but he could not. For a long, trembling moment he bent, sobbing, over Master Blaheris with his hand upon his heart. No flutter of life. The old man was dead. But there was a look on the white face that the boy would remember as long as he lived. It held no sign of pain or terror, no expression of confusion and discontent and longing such as had so often rested upon it in life. Even in that moment of great danger, Hugh forgot his fears, noting only that large, quiet face. How radiantly glad it was. But Brother John, there was not a second to be lost. Hugh turned from the dead to the living. Brother John still breathed, though he was unconscious. With a whispered prayer for strength, the boy leaned over him and, half lifting, half dragging, managed to carry the inert form down the steps and around behind the altar. With a mighty wrench, straining every nerve and muscle, he pulled up the marked stone which concealed the passageway. A draught of musty-smelling air rushed up, bringing the momentary relief to his stinging throat and smarting eyeballs. A strange, almost supernatural power seemed to surge through him as he bent again over Brother John, grasped him under the arms, and dragged him down the rough stone stairs into the black darkness of the cave below. Feeling his way step by step, he found the broken wall of the well and gently laid the still unconscious monk on the rough earth floor beside it. Then he tore off a piece of the hem of his tunic and, soaking it in the well water, bathed Brother John's face. Slowly the warmth of life came back into the cold hands. Hugh felt the eyelids flutter and heard a long, trembling sigh. "Art thou all right, Brother John?" said he, his own voice unsteady. "Aye," said the other shortly.